Welcome to the show. Today we have an active shooter in Fort Stewart, Georgia. It's a developing news right now. I'm gonna share the screen with you so we can see what is going on. It is a development story. Let me bring the my media camera. Let me share the screen with you. What I'm doing that real quick. Let me see right here. Yeah, that's it is. Right here. Breaking news.
We have breaking news right now. Fort Stewart in Georgia is on lockdown because of an active shooter. Army officials say there are casualties and the incident is ongoing. They say one of the sections of the base was locked down around 11 a.m. and that law enforcement is on the scene. The FBI is also now offering support. Not a lot of details here yet, but of course we are monitoring this situation. What we do know right now is what the Army is telling us, an active shooter. So it sounds like right now this is still ongoing. And again, they are confirming there are victims here. ABC News senior Pentagon reporter Louis Martinez has more on this. Louis, what do we know so far?
Well, Diane, not much more than what you have been reporting so far. But what I can tell you is that when I've spoken to Army officials here at the Pentagon, they are very concerned about what is going on there and trying to get as many details as possible. One of the things that they're just not certain of right now is any information about the potential number of casualties that there may have been. We have that confirmation from Fort Stewart that, yes, there have been casualties in this incident, but they don't have a grasp yet, which is one part of the information flow that is not making its way here to the Pentagon. I should point out that Fort Stewart is a very large base. It's a very important base for the Army. It's home to the Army's 3rd Infantry Division, which is one of its larger armored units. So there's a lot of training that goes on there as well. There's also some attached airfields where some training goes on, and it's close to Savannah, Georgia. So when we see information about something like this, there are a couple of things to remember. We should remember that access to weapons on military bases is not easy. And at all times, whenever there is any kind of a military some kind of a shooting on a military base, we should remember that all weapons are accounted for and are kept in armories. So therefore, the only access that soldiers have to their weapons is through registered training. And it's when it's taken out of their armory. So when something like this happens, it more than likely will involve personal weaponry, which they are allowed to have as long as these are registered weapons. So for now, a lot of information is still trying to process its way here to the Pentagon, but we at least have this same confirmation from Fort Stewart's Public Affairs Office that there is a lockdown, that there have been some casualties, and that there is an ongoing active shooter situation.
And Louis, they're saying this was in the 2nd Armored Brigade Combat Team area. Do you know anything more about that location?
Well, this would be what it is that the base is a division headquarters. And so essentially that means we're talking about 20,000 personnel. Divisions are divided into brigades. So this is an armored unit, so that's why they have armored in their title. Brigade Combat Team is a division of about 3,500, 4,000 soldiers. And the brigade, the various brigades make up the division. So this would have been an area that would have been potentially just designated for potentially a headquarters area for this brigade combat team or some kind of logistics facilities assigned to this. Remember, we are talking about an armored brigade, so there would be a lot of military hardware. We're talking about specifically Bradley fighting vehicles. We're talking about tanks. So you're going to have some maintenance areas, some depots that are associated with each one of these combat teams. So it's unclear exactly which one of these facilities that I've just listed is the one that is associated specifically with the 2nd Armored Brigade Combat Team. But at least we know this information coming from Fort Stewart right now.
And Louis, we're hearing the FBI is now offering assistance. How does that part of this work in terms of trying to now coordinate the law enforcement response?
Well, there's a lot of coordination taking place, Diane, because this is a federal facility. So automatically, the federal government's law enforcement arms are going to be involved. And in this case, this would be the FBI, Federal Bureau of Investigation. You also have local law enforcement, some of which you're seeing on your screen there. When a situation like this takes place at a military facility, you're going to see a surge of resources from the local community as well as the in-house security forces at some of these facilities. So we immediately start thinking about military policemen, but there's also a civilian law enforcement force that is active at most military bases. They are affiliated with the Pentagon. And so then you see the civilian law enforcement from neighboring counties, from cities, neighborhoods around the military bases. You also see the military police. You also see the coordination with some of that civilian Pentagon law enforcement that we're talking about. So you're going to see a surge in resources. Another thing that you're going to see at a military facility as large as Fort Stewart is that there is also a medical facility associated with the base. And in this case, it's the Wynn Medical Center. So we are reaching out to see if there are any reports of any casualties that have been transferred to that facility.
All right, Louis Martinez for us at the Pentagon. Louis, thank you. And again, Fort Stewart in Georgia there is on lockdown right now because of an active shooter. The Army is confirming casualties and says law enforcement is on the scene. We will continue to follow that breaking news and bring you more information as we get it.
Here is the timeline of what happened in Fort Stewart this morning, about an hour ago. Remember, this is Easter time. So at 11:04, a lockdown was put in place in Fort Hood in response to the active shooter situation. Then afterwards, around 35 minutes later, Liberty County schools were under lockdown, or they call it soft lockdown, in response to the active shooter incident happening in Fort Stewart. Barton Kinnut Elementary, Joseph Martin Elementary, and Nelson Golden Elementary were under lockdown. Then we move into 11:40. All gates in Fort Stewart were closed. A minute late, 6 minutes later, an official confirming the active shooter incident, saying several casualty has been reported. At 11:58, FBI, the Atlanta Savannah office were aware of the active shooter incident and coordinated with the Army Criminal Investigation of CID. And at 12:04, which remember this is Eastern time, I'm in Central, Republican Buddy Carter releases a statement of the incident. That's what he, and quote, I am monitoring the situation at Fort Stewart. Please join me in prayers for the casualties, their families, and the brave law enforcement officers working to protect our community. At 12:10, Georgia Governor Brian Kemp calls the incident a tragedy, issuing the following statement, quote, as we remain in close contact with law enforcement on the ground, Marty and the girls and I are saddened by today's tragedy at Fort Stewart. We are keeping the victims, their families, and all those involved were and those who answered the call to serve in our hearts and prayers. We ask for the Georgians everywhere to do the same. 12:20, Georgia House Speaker John Burns issued a statement. Dialogue and alongside with the Georgian and praying family in love. All gates were closed outside traffic. As of right now, the gate Fort Stewart is partially closed. They were saying few few of the gates were open. As of right now, few of the gates were open. They are saying there is victims, at least 5 or 7. That's what I gathered in the news. I'm gonna share that with you right now. See if we can kind of see what's going on. Let me see. It's the same thing right here. Same timeline I just told you about. Let me show you. A lot of commercials. So at 12:35, 12:32, let me share this with you. 12:32, this situation is no longer an active shooter. I guess they neutralize the situation, I believe. Let me bring that to you guys while I'm working on this. Let me share the screen with you real quick. So as of right now, according to them, there is no longer an active shooter situation. Let me go back to this screen that I was watching at, that I was looking at right now, right here, right here. So as of right now, shooter no longer a threat. So I'm assuming it is under custody or they just took care of it. Right now, Trump debriefed his fourth tour situation after cutting lunch short. So President Trump was informed around, I would say, 15 minutes ago. And he issued this statement, was scheduled to have lunch until 12:30 today, Eastern Time, was cut short as he heads to the Situation Room to be debriefed on the active shooter and forced Stewart. Casualty has been reported. So this is the time by time, and right now, they just posted this like 1 minute ago. Forced Stewart School resumed normal operation after lockdown was lifted. The school and Fort Stewart have returned to normal operation following the lifting of the temporary lockdown. According to the Department of Defense Education Activity, or DODEA, alert issued on Wednesday. The alert confirmed that Diamond Kessler and all the schools were no longer under lockdown. So the kids were safe. They partially opened post right here. 5 soldiers injured in Fort Stewart shooting. Suspect is in custody. 5 U.S. Army soldiers were wounded Wednesday morning in an active shooter incident in Fort Stewart, 2nd Armored Brigade Combat Team, or ABCT, complex in Georgia. The base was placed in lockdown at 11:04 following the report of the gunfire. Emergency medical teams respond within minutes. The shooter was apprehended at 11:35. All injured personnel were transported to the Wing Army Community Hospital for further treatment. Officials confirm there is no ongoing threat to the broader community. Fort Stewart lifted lockdown at 12:10 through the second ABCT complex remains secure. So that's why they opened the gates. 5 people are wounded and they were taken to the hospital. I'm gonna try to find out whether those people are in good health and not, go further down the rabbit hole of, they're not like becoming casualties. So I'm gonna keep looking. I'm gonna keep uh, showing you what is going on because this is a weird situation. It is a weird situation. We have too many active shooters. If we keep track of it. We have one in Manhattan, and we have few others right afterwards in the next following days, like a copycat type of deal. So we're let me find another news so we can keep this rolling. Let me refresh on my end. Let me know what you guys think about this. Why all this wave of active shooters or copycats developed after the Manhattan shooting? I would say last week. Let me see if they got new updates. We have not had a news update. It's just more news. Let me see. Let me go back over here. Thank you guys for watching. Let me bring up a video of. I think. I think official is talking. I just saw that just right now. Let me see if the police already issuing a statement. I just saw that coming through my feed. Thank you guys for watching. Appreciate it. I'm doing my best here. The internet kind of slow. Where I'm living at, they building a new subdivision, so internet water has been running slow in the last couple of days. It is crazy how developing. is in. Let me see. All right, it's too slow. Sorry about that. If you see me frozen, but you can hear me, let me know. Cause on my end everything's froze. But I will keep you guys updated on this developing news. If you just tune in, an active shooter was apprehended at Fort Stewart, Georgia, in the army base. 5 people are wounded. So far, no one has been confirmed a casualty as deceased yet. So let me see what's going on because it's a conflicting information because a lot of people I seen there is 5 people deceased or and they're saying there's 5 people wounded, but I'm trying to get a actual news on it because I don't want to give the false information on what's going on. Let me see if I can pull it up right now. It's a more news coming, but nothing in nothing new. It's just like 10 minutes old, 20 minutes old. Let me see if I can bring up another video from YouTube. We're talking about this. Come on, internet's frozen. Come on, internet, not today. Tonight, I am going to do another live stream at around 6:30 p.m. Central Time. Make sure you tune in. I will have guests tonight. Let me see how this works because this is going too slow. Here we go. Finally catching up right now. All right. Let's see. Let's see if we can find you new news about this active shooter, which is very unfortunate event. I never been stationed in Fort Stewart. I think the closest base I was stationed at was not a station, but I just went for training was Fort Bragg. I was there for a few months. Let me go check this info. Let me see right now. Second, let me bypass this. All right, let me play this for you guys. Don't go anywhere. Let me play this. Here we go. All right, let me play the screen.
Don't know what's happening inside there. We are waiting follow-up information from Fort Stewart, Hinesville Police, the Liberty County Sheriff. We've reached out to all these different agencies to try and get some sort of information. As I turn around right here, I see another one of our crews pulling up in the parking lot here. We are bringing all of our team out here to cover this story the best we can, to get you that information as quickly as we can, because we know in these situations, if you have someone that works or lives on Fort Stewart, you want answers just as we do, because this is a very scary situation, not knowing what is actually going on inside. For now, Brooke, I'm going to send it back to y'all, but we're going to stay out here at Fort Stewart, and we'll be back in just a moment.
So much for that live report and all of those updates. Clear for now. Earlier, that Governor Brian Kemp released posted this on close contact with law enforcement on the ground. Saddened by today's tragedy at Fort Stewart, we're keeping the victims, their families, and all those who answer the call to serve in our hearts and prayers. that Georgians everywhere do the same. Now, I do want to quickly mention there are two other statements that we recently got a hold of. Representative Buddy Carter is now weighing in on this situation. I'm going to be reading his statement. So again, if you see me looking down, that is why he said, quote, I am monitoring the situation at Fort Stewart. Please join me in prayers for the casualties, their families, and the brave law enforcement officers working to protect our community. And I also just want to mention that
about an hour, 45 minutes to an hour ago, there was security here. In fact, they had just set up here in this intersection and were directing traffic. When I first got here, the main gate was completely full and they had cars going all the way down this road waiting to get on the base. But then about 10 minutes after I got in, probably an hour ago, maybe 40 minutes ago at this point, that is when they just shut that entire gate off. At this point, I actually see police here. Do you have any updates for us, sir? 1 second, guys. I'm going to stay on the air just 1 sec. Okay, okay. Gotcha. Is there any information you can share with us or anything like that? Okay, okay. Well, we'll wrap up this hit and we'll get to the Ag Center, you said?
Yeah, the Ed Center, the big building right there.
Gotcha.
Down here, take a left.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. So we actually just had an officer come up to us and tell us that Fort Stewart has actually asked us to leave this area here. Now, we're on a public sidewalk, as we would be at any other crime scene. They really can't kick us off of where we're at, but we are going to go there to try and get some more information in these sort of situations. We may get a press conference or something to that degree. So, again, just to kind of wrap up here, we are outside of the gate at Fort Stewart, where it seems they have reopened the gate to some degree. They are letting some folks back in, but we know this is a continually developing situation, and that could change at any moment. We'll continue to stay out here and bring you the latest. For now, I'm Andy Calder with JCL 22 News. Completely close off the gate. We know now that traffic has resumed in and out of the gate. We've seen a fair amount of people leaving Fort Stewart and a fair amount of people coming on. I want to step out of the way so my photographer can give you a better look at the area. Really, there's nothing to see from where we're at the main gate here. It has certainly calmed down and looks like a fairly typical day at Fort Stewart. But what I can tell you from experience dealing with these sort of security situations here on Fort Stewart is that after such a situation, you're going to notice a delayed time getting onto the base because of increased security trying to get you back on. Now, Fort Stewart in a statement told us that there is no active threat to the community.
On their names and the extent of those injuries. The shooter is in custody, and we are hearing from those on the ground that they are not concerned about a second shooter. They are saying at this point there is no threat. We'll continue to ask questions, and as we get more information, be sure to join us here on 11 Alive Plus.
This has been an 11 Alive News Special Report.
For the ultimate family getaway? Look no further than Jellystone Park Waller.
All right. There you go. There you have it. There's still ongoing investigation. I will bring another video. They're still going live right now. Have to find something better to look at because right now they just are repeating the same news over and over. Let me look over here so we can find on check CNN. Let me check on right here. Let's go to the Army Fort Hood Army base. Let's see. No, it's still on lockdown. Like right now, I'm in the Facebook for the Fort Stewart Army base. Right now, as 26 minutes, they just informed 5 soldiers were shot in the active shooter incident. Same timeline that I gave you a few minutes early. On this still pretty backed up. The gate was really, really backed up. So there's no additional information. I will stay on because I guarantee you there will be a. Let me go back. A it will be a press conference probably coming up in a few minutes. And let me check CBS News because they have to do a press conference. Give us an update. So let me see right here.
In that area, including the one with his rifle drawn over his MP vehicle.
So we are hearing that President Trump has been briefed on this shooting at Fort Stewart. So we just learned that moments ago. His press secretary, Carolyn Levitt, notified via Twitter or X that the president has been briefed on this shooting at Fort Stewart in Georgia, and that the White House is closely monitoring this unfolding situation. Again, this is a fluid situation. So we are getting information right now into our newsroom as we speak, and things are changing, things are moving. We have a statement right here, a new statement. This is Attorney General Chris Carr, and he says to monitor the situation out of Fort Stewart, that they are asking that all Georgians join them in praying for the victims and our entire military community. We heard a similar statement from Georgia Governor Brian Kemp earlier, as well as Congressman Buddy Carter. So reaction now pouring in, not only from across the state and the region, but also on a national level.
The eyes, apparently, of really the country, certainly the state of Georgia, are here in our area right now, yet again, just a month removed from that shooting at the Oglethorpe Mall, where that was also the case. And just like in our coverage of that shooting that happened again at the beginning of July, now this shooting happening at the beginning of August, we'll continue to tell you that this information that we get will continue to develop and change. And all we will try to do is be transparent with you about that information as we get it, tell you where we're getting it from, how our sources are bringing you the latest information and updates, and then continue to tell you when that kind of a detail changes. We saw that happen just moments ago as Shay was telling us she was hearing from folks at Memorial Hospital that the more severely injured victims of this shooting were going to be transported to Memorial, which is a level 1 trauma center, the only in the area, by helicopter. But that changed because of weather. And so now the 2 soldiers who were shot that are headed to Savannah are being brought to Memorial by car. Just an example of how this information can continue to change and how we'll continue to show you that. I want to show you what Shay is looking at over at Memorial Hospital right now. You can see there's an ambulance sitting in the bay.
Listening to WTOC, it's our opportunity to have journalists right there where you are at all times in your community. You are looking live right now at the hospital that is receiving those patients. Once again, at least 5 people injured and a shooter apprehended following an attack at Fort Stewart in Georgia. I want to bring in CBS News correspondent Chanel Call, watching this story and the developments closely. So Chanel, we just heard from those local viewers what's happening there. It sounded like in some of the initial reports that the threat was neutralized, but then you see that sharpshooter right there with his gun aimed right there on the hood of his military vehicle. Are we to assume that that base is just on high alert protection on the outside, and that gun is pointed just to keep the public out?
Yeah, I mean, look, this looks like terrifying moments at the Fort Stewart Army base, Reed, and still so many questions about exactly how this happened and who is involved here. But the base right now is saying at least 5 of its soldiers were shot. Again, we don't know their conditions at this point, but I can tell you those soldiers, Reed, were treated on site, and then they were moved to Wynn Army Community Hospital for further treatment. I think we just had that shot up for our viewers before we came to me. We can also report this hour, Reed, that the active shooter has been apprehended and the lockdown has been lifted on the main part of the base just over an hour and a half after the lockdown was installed. We're also, important to mention, told that there is no current threat to public safety. Let's just remind everybody how this played out and how we got here, right, Reed? Law enforcement was dispatched for a possible shooting. This happened in the 2nd Armored Brigade Combat Team area just before 11 o'clock. It happened at 10:56 a.m. This is important to mention because, Reed, this team is known as the Spartans. This brigade is recognized as the Army's most modernized and lethal unit. The Army had advised people who were on the base at that time to stay inside. They put out this message on social media, on Facebook, saying close your doors, lock your windows and doors before the shooter was apprehended at about 11:35 a.m. Now, by 12:10 p.m., Fort Stewart had lifted the lockdown of the main containment area, but again, the 2nd ABCT complex is still locked down for now. Just moments ago, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt had said, look, the president has been briefed on this and the White House is now closely monitoring the situation. And this will and continue to be a huge investigation, Reed. We're seeing multiple law enforcement agencies now working together on this, including, of course, Georgia State Police, but also the FBI's Atlanta office and the ATF is assisting. We also know, Reed, this has had a ripple effect in the community, right? There are 3 elementary schools that are actually on this base. All 3 were in lockdown. I can tell you now those lockdowns have been lifted. The superintendent saying in a statement there is no immediate threat to schools at this time. And I also want to mention this is such a huge base. It's the biggest east of the Mississippi River with over 10,000 people who live there. That includes not just soldiers, but also family members, Army civilian employees, and it's about 40 miles southwest of Savannah, which is why it took our crews a second to sort of get there and bring us those images. I just want to ask our control room if we have an image of the front door of that military base. I know we've been going to that, which sort of shows the military scene on the ground there. And I was doing some digging here, Reed, just to get some perspective on this. The last mass shooting at a military base was in 2019 at Pensacola, Florida, where 3 people were killed. But again, we know 5 soldiers were shot here today at Fort Stewart Army Base, and we will continue to bring you the latest here on CBS News 24/7.
Chanel Call, thank you so much for that update. Let's go back to Anna Schechter. And Anna, as we think about and project ourselves into that tense moment after the bullets flew, my friend, you've got to think how frustrating it is for these soldiers, because according to WTOC's reporting there in Savannah, they were going to take 2 of the more critically wounded soldiers by helicopter, but then weather mandated that they have to be driven that 45 minutes that Chanel just mentioned. That has got to be tense.
That's exactly right. But luckily they were in a place where you have trained medical personnel who can initially administer, for example, put on a tourniquet if needed. I mean, these are highly specialized units. I mean, even their fellow soldiers would have been able to step in and help initially stop bleeding and the like. But it sounds to me from our affiliates reporting that at least 2 people are
All right, back. I guess the internet can slow, but let me bring it back.
transportation was delayed. So yes, very frustrating, of course. And also we'll see if the suspect was one of their own, was a member of the team or somebody who worked there on the base. As you mentioned earlier, you need to have a security clearance to actually even enter on base. So right now the suspect is in custody. Investigators, they always want to be able to interview the person immediately, one-on-one, to try to piece together the timeline of exactly what led up, and of course to rule out if anyone else knew of or supported the attack. I mean, that is kind of the number one immediate goal, because they want to mitigate any other threat. And they also want to interview anyone who might have had any information that this attack was coming. Very important first steps in this investigative process. And of course, all of that information is going to be meticulously gathered and preserved, because this will be part of the story as a case goes forward, eventually as a prosecutor brings a case. So right now, these are very key minutes, hours unfolding right now in the investigative process, Reed.
Well, and Anna, it occurs to me as we try to deduce what the profile of that alleged shooter is. This was somebody who at a minimum was able to get proximity to some highly specialized, highly trained military personnel. You just heard Chanel really characterize them as being elite. Characterize for
That's
us
right.
anybody in the proximity of them or anybody who would be training with them. They've been in the military for quite some time, no?
For sure. This unit, as Chanel was saying, highly specialized, trained for combat. This is the milieu that we're talking about, and these are also the victims, the 5 soldiers who were shot. Were a part of this. So potentially the suspect was highly trained and had access to weapons. So we're waiting to hear. Obviously, the investigators now have determined themselves an identification, and they're going to want to go and search, obtain electronic devices. They're going to want to look for other weapons that might have been stockpiled. They're going to want to look for motive, of course. Look for if they were influenced online, if it was a personal grievance. I mean, they're going to chase down everything, and there are so many different investigative avenues that they're going to be going down simultaneously, and that has already kicked in. That is already underway.
Anna Schechter, thank you so much. And of course, our hearts with the families who are attached to those 5 soldiers who have been injured in that shooting. We are watching the hospitals in that area. Journalists on the ground with WTOC pick up the coverage from right outside the hospital.
About the victims that we do know about, especially the 2 that, Shay, you learned are en route right now to Savannah, to Memorial Hospital. What are you learning now?
We are still waiting for those 2 victims to arrive here. We do know that it's going to be via ambulance, not helicopter, because of the weather situation. So that's just another added factor here in a situation that nobody wants to confront, nobody wants to have to deal with, but that is the unfortunate situation that we're seeing here today. So we know that there are at least 2 people en route from Fort Stewart, and keep in mind how long of a drive that is from Fort Stewart into the heart of Savannah to get to the hospital. Obviously, they're in an ambulance. They're going to be able to go faster, have sirens on, so people are going to be moving out of their way. But it is a longer travel time than if they had been arriving here via ambulance. So we are here at Memorial Hospital waiting outside of the ambulance bay where ambulance drop-offs occur. Now, I can tell you that we have also seen several Savannah Police Department officers pulling up to the emergency room over the last couple of minutes. I see at least 2 or 3 at the walk-in entrance, and then there's 1 lone officer's car over by the ambulance bay. We don't know if that is related to the soldiers coming in, but in these high-profile situations, that's not uncommon to have some kind of a police presence to assist and make sure that people's identities aren't revealed, things of that nature. So we are aware that it could be related, but we don't know 100% for sure if if that is related. So again, we are expecting 2 soldiers to be transported here. The Army has confirmed that at least 5 people were shot, and so we don't know what the conditions are of those other 3 people. Wishful thinking says that they're able to get their injuries treated at Wynn Army Hospital, but we don't know for sure whether that's the case. The 2 people that are going to be coming here to Memorial, we can infer that their injuries are going to be on the more severe end, because Memorial is the only level 1 trauma center in our area, and it's the only hospital that is going to be suitable to treat more severe or critical injuries. So we can infer that at least those 2 people are seriously or critically injured. We don't know exactly what their status is right now. If we had their names, which I can tell you we don't at this time, but if we had their names in a typical situation, we could give those names to the hospital and they could at least give us an update on what their condition is, tell us whether they're in stable condition, critical condition, serious condition, what the extent of their injuries are. But because these are soldiers that we're talking about, that information is going to have to come directly from the Army. I can tell you that I have been communicating with the Army since I've been down here on the ground, trying to get more information about the conditions of these soldiers and whether there have been any deaths. The word casualty has been said. Again, just to emphasize, casualty could mean a death, but it could also mean a serious injury. So I am in communication with those officials for the Army, and as soon as I have any information to share, I will. But just keep in mind that this is an extremely fluid situation, and as you can imagine, likely a very chaotic situation. Now that there's no ongoing threat to the public and that the people responsible for this has been apprehended, that gives way for people to start getting their ducks in a row and figuring out what is fact and what is not fact. And we're going to continue to bring you the facts here on WTOC, but keep in mind, because of the fluidity of the situation, that can change. As soon as anybody comes here to the hospital, we will be the first to let you know, but for now I am going to send it back to the studio.
All right, Shay, thanks
All
for
right,
that live
listening in
report.
to WTOC coverage, likely you heard me with my microphone on. I was asking my producer, are we hearing a helicopter there? Because I could have swore I heard one. That would be good news, because as we rewind the tape, we know that 2 of those soldiers who were shot, the most critically wounded, according to reports, were not able to fly by helicopter to that hospital. They have to, because of weather conditions, be taken by an ambulance. But hearing that overhead raises some questions here. So we're all holding our breath to hear the status of those 5 soldiers who were shot and injured there on their Army base in Georgia. Let's put that aside for a moment as we all hold a prayer for those soldiers, and let's talk about the suspect. Let's talk with somebody who knows how these investigations go down, former FBI official Tim Gallagher. Tim, first of all, just want to get your reaction to what you see outside that hospital. I've been at scenes like this. Does it strike you that that hospital seems quiet at this point?
Yes, thanks for having me on here, Reed. Yes, you want, that first hour is absolutely critical to get the wounded treated, get them first level care. The good news story here is you heard Anna say before, when we're training people to how to react to an active shooter, we're like talking about that first aid, that stopped the bleed, and that on a military base, people in that room would have been trained in that. So the initial triage that was handled on site, the initial aid that was given, none better, right? So that's the good news story. You would have liked to have seen them getting to the hospital quicker, but as I said, they're receiving treatment along the way.
And that is good to know that training can come into play. But there's also the other story, and that is the investigation into who pulled the trigger and why they would do something like this. In recent mass shootings, even in the Midtown Manhattan mass shooting, very quickly we started to get a profile of that shooter and the allegations that he had mental illness. Because the big question is, when things like this happen, is why didn't somebody see warning signs before? What will happen at the FBI level, at the investigative level, to try to figure out if this person had any warning signs that perhaps were missed?
Right. So as you're mentioning, there's a command post that stood up right now, the FBI side by side with Army Criminal Investigative Command and the state police. One of the things the FBI is doing is going back into its holdings. What did the FBI know? What have people reported on in the past that has to do with this individual? What are some things that, may not be identified with his name, but that could be him, right? So they're going to go back and see what was out there and then develop those leads and interview people to figure out what exactly it was that, that may have pushed him over the edge. What was what took him from ideation to action, and trying to, get evidence as to who knew what and when, and how can they, we have how they could put a criminal case together.
So from the vantage point of the FBI also, you saw some of those live images coming from our affiliate WTOC, and you saw the law enforcement officer with a long gun. We would think that this is a sniper, somebody who's trained as a sniper, still looking through the sites there. We're also hearing about securing that perimeter. We know that the threat has been eliminated. Some people are able in that community to go about their daily activities, but yet you see that long gun and that soldier there with his eyes literally through the sights. Do you think the perimeter is secure when you see a scene like that, or is that just keeping the perimeter secure?
Yeah, they're going to be on high alert, the Army, on the outer perimeter for quite some time, while they work the scene here. You're always afraid, or you're always cognizant of the fact that there could be, a secondary shooter. That doesn't appear to be the case right here. But there's going to be a surge of law enforcement resources, whether that be crime scene processing, victim witness interviewing, and you want to keep that perimeter as secure as possible, because you don't want this to present a target of opportunity for someone else out there who may have an axe to grind, with the U.S. Army.
Tim Gallagher, thank you so much. I anticipate we'll be talking to you a lot more throughout the day as we learn about the victims and the alleged shooter. Okay, so let's go to the Pentagon and Ellie Watson, who is standing by. Ellie, we're aware that the president has been briefed on this. You had mentioned the last time we talked that you expected we should hear from Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. Anything there? Any developments at the Pentagon?
Not yet. I think the Defense Secretary will likely be briefed today, but we haven't heard an update on that. We're hearing from Army officials who are still working to confirm the extent of the injuries. We know 5 soldiers shot. They were treated on site and then transported to community hospital, and then our local affiliate says some may be going to the Savannah area hospital.
Yeah, let's wait for the internet to catch up. But I really appreciate you guys watching. One question that arises to me is, was the shooter a soldier, civilian, or otherwise connected to Fort Stewart? And did they have any prior relationship with the victim? That's a good question to ask, because it's a lot of tangibles that we have to look at. Hopefully, we get some answers by the end of the day. There we go. So it's a lot to unpack on this situation, but it's still developing news. Nobody has passed on the situation. They're wounded. I pray for their speedy recovery. I'm glad that nobody has uh, passed, and they have the perpetrator in custody. Hopefully, they are able to find out what's going on, but trigger uh, this active shooter on post, which is rare, but it can happen everywhere. Let me bring it back to news.
We also are aware that Fort Stewart is one of many military bases all over the United States. What happens when there is an active shooting situation on one military base at other bases around the country?
I think the Army will be on high alert throughout the country just to make sure, as your previous guest noted, that no one who has an axe to grind with the Army tries to take advantage of some of the tension, some of the stress that is coming out of the incident at Fort Stewart today. Fort Stewart says there's no more active threat to the base there, but the Army, the military across the country will continue to monitor to make sure there are no copycats who try and take advantage.
And certainly training and strength of America's military and the military bases right there, top of mind for all of us. Ellie Watson at the Pentagon, thank you so much for talking to us once again. Okay, journalists in your communities, and to prove that, our partners at WTOC CBS affiliate in Savannah and their coverage to their locals. Watch.
We're going to check in now with our Shay Schrader, who is live at Memorial Health.
Yes, we are here at Memorial Hospital. We can hear sirens in the distance and have been alerted by Memorial officials that this is likely the soldiers arriving from Wynn Army Base Hospital. Now, we can see a Savannah Police Department officer over here on the corner, likely in place for the arrival, given that these are going to be some high-profile patients coming in here. So we are expecting to see some lights and sirens on an ambulance as it comes through here. Again, we could hear sirens just a little bit ago. Officials from Memorial telling us that that is likely the patients from Wynn Army Hospital coming in here. We are expecting that 2 patients will be coming from the base. Again, Fort Stewart has confirmed that at least 5 people were shot on the base, and 2 of them are coming here to Memorial in Savannah for treatment. Now, we it may be somebody else, but we will be sure to bring you right back here just as soon as we have eyes on an ambulance, and we will let you know when those patients get here. For now, I'll send it back to the studio.
All right, thanks so much, Shay, for the very latest information. As Shay mentioned that,
Listening to coverage from WTOC in Savannah as we await the arrival of soldiers for treatment there at that hospital. CBS News 24/7 with continuing coverage of the attack at Fort Stewart in Georgia when we come back.
There you have it. We're still updating. Right now, the injured are on their way to the hospital. Hopefully, they arrive in the next few minutes, and then we'll bring back the actual footage. The situation right now is 1 critical and 4 wounded. Not known if it is stable or not. Hopefully, they are. The good thing is that as they mentioned on the footage, being on the base, we have people knowledgeable in first aid. That's critical for survival. Everybody knows that if you wounded, the first 30 seconds to a whole minute are critical to survival. So hopefully they are in good health. They are right to the hospital. They get stabilized and we find out what's going on, what happened, and if that shooter was an actual soldier or he was an outsider, they have gained access to posts. I don't know. We have to find that out. Hopefully, we find out at the end of the day and give us more update on this situation because it's kind of like happening. Remember back in 2009, at the roof, it happened in Fort Hood, and then 2015 in Pensacola. Those active shooter situations are really bad black eye to for any military base, and this cause chaos. There's a lot of stuff that's about to happen right now, like critical training, more security on posts, which is going to develop more security measures to not allow everybody on post, and most likely, I guarantee everybody gonna get checked at the gate when they come in, like full check. They have check out the vehicle, and they're gonna check everybody's vehicle inside and out, make sure nobody's having contraband or illegal items going into the post, which is very critical for the security of the personnel, families, and the civilians that work there on post. This is crazy. I was working on some footage and some videos that we pre-record, and this came up on my feed, and there was a prior shooting incident, but I realized it's actual shooting incident for today. On the timeline, it was pretty quick. They apprehend the shooter. For you guys remember, at 11:04, just the shooting start, and not even 30 minutes later, they apprehend the shooter. Um, we do not know how that happened, how they apprehend the shooter, whether the shooter gave up or the shooter got surrounded. We do not know. We're about to find out in the next hour or two. If I'm not here for that, I will definitely will give you the greatest, the latest update on my live stream around 6:30 p.m. tonight Central Time, and you will get more information on what is going on in Georgia, and especially for Stewart, Georgia. Hopefully, in my opinion, hopefully we are not there are not more copycats. You will try to emulate what happened today. Let me bring it back to me.
Soldiers are about to arrive at the hospital.
Yeah, there was a bit of a delay in getting them there. That's because they couldn't be transferred via a helicopter due to some weather concerns on the ground. So they were being sent there through an ambulance, and we're hearing again they are set to arrive there shortly, but there was unfortunately a delay. I also want to mention, Reed, we do have some new video from Citizens app inside Fort Stewart where we can apparently see the soldiers walking through. This will be the first time I'm also seeing this video. Take a look and just see what this looked like for them inside the base as these obviously chaotic moments were playing out when they found out they were in lockdown. So again, a short 10-second video here just showing a little bit of what it was like inside the base during that moment in time. Let's just again remind our viewers how we got here, how this all played out. We know law enforcement was dispatched for a possible shooting. This happened in the 2nd Armored Brigade Combat Team area just before 11 a.m. at 10:56 this morning. This is important to note. We were talking about this last time, Reed, because this team is known as the Spartans. This brigade, it's recognized as the Army's most modernized and lethal unit. The Army had advised people that were on the base to stay inside, to close and to lock their doors and the windows before the shooter was apprehended at 11:35 a.m. Now, during that time, that's when the Army says 5 soldiers were shot. Again, we do not know their conditions at this point, but we do know that 2 of them are being transferred to Memorial Hospital. And again, because the helicopter couldn't fly due to bad weather, they are being sent there via an ambulance, and there was a bit of a delay there. By 12:10 p.m., Reed, we know that the active shooter was apprehended, and the Fort Stewart base had lifted the lockdown on this main containment area, but the 2nd ABCT complex, that is still locked down for now. We are, though, told there is no current threat to public safety, and this is important because there is such a large community out there. We're also seeing a huge federal response to this incident, right? The White House had just sent out a message on social media through Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt in the last hour saying the president has been briefed and the White House is now closely monitoring the situation. We're also seeing multiple law enforcement agencies coming together and working together on this investigation, including, of course, Georgia State Police, but also the FBI's Atlanta office, Reed, and the ATF. They are also assisting here. I do want to talk about where this happened and just how this impacted the community, because there are 3 elementary schools that are on this base. They were all in lockdown during that hour and a half of chaos. Those lockdowns have now been lifted, but this is a huge base, Reed. It's the biggest east of the Mississippi River. There are over 10,000 people who live there. That includes not just soldiers, but we're also talking about family members and Army civilian employees who live there. Just as a locator, I can tell you it's about 40 miles southwest of Savannah, which is why it took a couple of moments for our local crews to actually get there and get you video on the ground. We've since seen some of those images, the military police cars outside the base. The last mass shooting at a military base like this one was back in 2019, Reed, at Pensacola, Florida, and 3 people there were killed. At this point, again, we know 5 people were at least injured in the situation that played out at Fort Stewart today. We are still waiting to get some updates on their conditions. 2 of them, we are being told, are almost at Memorial Hospital now.
Chanel Call, thank you. And for our viewers at home, we just want to let you know the reason why you're not seeing a lot of video there or even helicopter video like you usually see. As she just mentioned, this is a military base. Likely impossible to get a news helicopter over to look down into the scene. That airspace is likely protected. And then the entire place just in complete lockdown. also because the fact that it takes a long time for news crews to get there, that's why you're only starting to see images come in like the one that you saw from Citizens App right there at the top. But let's bring in Anna Schechter. She's senior coordinating producer for our Crime and Public Safety Unit. Anna, you had your eyes on that video we just showed from on the inside of the base. What strikes you from what you saw?
Well, there's always a chaotic scene when people are alerted that there's an active shooter situation, and police arrived. They were called at 10:56 a.m. The shooter was apprehended at 11:34 a.m. or 11:35 a.m. Excuse me. So that's more than a half an hour of time for a lot of people wondering what's going on, wondering what to do, if there were more than one perpetrator. So it's very scary, but the fact that you were on a military base, at least for the soldiers who were there in the immediate area, they are highly trained. They're trained to deal with this kind of situation. And so they would that training would kick in, and they follow protocol. Probably also in terms of immediately helping the victims, those who were injured, because they all have basic combat medical training as well. That's sort of part of it, so that they can care for their fellow soldiers out in the battlefield. So that's the population that we're talking about. And, just thinking about the families of these 5 individuals and having to find out that, they were the unlucky ones who were among those injured amidst, this is a community of thousands of people, soldiers, their spouses, and their children, and then other civilians who work there. So just heartbreaking for them to get that phone call or have someone come to their door and tell them what has just happened to their loved one, and the fact, that they're likely being transported to a local hospital. I imagine families are probably trying to get there, if they're not there already, to be with their loved ones in the hospital. And it was really heartbreaking to hear that there was that delay and having to be stuck in traffic. And you can imagine the ambulance with the sirens blaring and cars moving off the road to let that ambulance pass. So those injured could get the care that they need. But again, when we look at that video and you're thinking in those moments, these soldiers, even though they sign up for combat, they're not expecting this to happen in their own training base where they and their families live. It's a shock to everyone, no matter how much training you have. And also, these teams get so close. They describe themselves as family members often, because they go through the trenches together. So to see, a member of your team be shot and fall, I mean, that's very traumatic for all of those soldiers who were there, who witnessed that event today.
Well, and I, like you, have had the privilege of knowing many of our nation's servants in many branches of military. My dad's an Army veteran, and listen, if you ask an Army veteran in a crisis, who do you want to have your back, they will point to the soldier to the left and to the right, in front of them, behind them, and they'll say, my brothers, my sisters here next to me. So we know that they were able to lean on their training and lean on their brothers and sisters in that training in those crucial moments. But also, you see that map that we had up there, and you see the Army base, and then you see Savannah far away. At least on the map, it looks far away. It is important to note that the only reason we're not seeing a helicopter get help more immediately for the 2 who are most severely injured. And there you go. You see the map there, Fort Stewart Army Base, and then it is quite a distance to Savannah, where that level 1 trauma hospital is. The reason why a helicopter couldn't lift off of the Army base and get over to Savannah is because of weather conditions. But Anna, it's not to say that there wasn't immediate help and immediate treatment and training offered those soldiers while they have that agonizing drive over into Savannah.
That's right. That's right. So those soldiers, and there are medical personnel who are on site who also live at that base. I mean, you think of a base, it's a community in and of itself with medical personnel who are there, its own law enforcement apparatus. So, you know, police on the base responded likely to that call, and the Department of Defense is the lead investigating this. They are the lead agency on this. And so those law enforcement personnel who are based there, they were the first responders to get there, treat those victims, and apprehend the suspect. You know, each of those buildings that we're seeing, there are multiple levels there. So we don't know if the suspect was able to run upstairs or, you know, leave the premises after firing shots. It took about a half an hour for law enforcement to apprehend him, so they had to locate him. You can imagine what that is like for those first responders who know there is an armed and dangerous person that they need to go after and apprehend. And, you know, we can put ourselves in those shoes, the bravery that they have to tap into to go and apprehend a suspect. And from all the reporting and what's come out of the base, you know, the suspect has been apprehended, is in custody, is likely being questioned at this time. They want to get as much information as quickly as possible for this burgeoning investigation that we were talking about in the last half hour, Reed.
Anna Schechter, thank you so much for that. And as the nation holds its breath to hear the fate of those 5 soldiers injured in that shooting at Fort Stewart in Georgia, just a moment ago, we were able to watch CBS affiliate WTOC. They were starting to hear sirens approaching that hospital. Their hope, as is ours, is that the ambulances are carrying those soldiers. Let's go ahead and listen into their coverage right now to see if they have an update.
Let's get to her right away.
Yes, so actually I see another ambulance coming in right now. That is the Central EMS ambulance, the ambulance that we've seen from when Army Community Hospital has been labeled U.S. Army. So I don't believe that this is an ambulance that's carrying any soldiers, although we don't know that for certain. But I can tell you the last ambulance we saw that had the last soldier was labeled U.S. Army. One soldier was taken here to Memorial Hospital. I would say it's been probably 10 or 15 minutes or so now. We don't know the conditions of any of the soldiers that have been shot or involved in this shooting. The Army hasn't given out that information. We did just get a press release from the Army several minutes ago saying that they weren't going to provide any further information until the investigation is complete. But again, we're also hearing about a press conference in a couple of hours. So it just serves as a reminder that in these situations, things are very fluid. You can hear one thing from one source and one from another. We really don't know what's going to happen, which is why we have a team of people on top of this situation throughout our entire viewing area. The Army has confirmed that 5 people were shot. 2 of them are here at Savannah Memorial Hospital, or rather one person is here. Another is in transit to Savannah Memorial Hospital. We know that this is the only level 1 trauma center in the area. It's the only hospital that is fit to help people with critical injuries, as you would imagine somebody would sustain had they been shot. I can tell you that in a typical situation, if somebody was hurt, if they were in a car wreck, if they had been shot, if they had been injured anyway, if we had the names of those people, we would be able to reach out to the hospital and they would be able to confirm what that person's condition was. They wouldn't tell us anything beyond that, but they would be able to confirm what that person's condition is. That's not how it's going to be in this situation, because this is military personnel, because it is soldiers. Any information is going to come from the Army. And again, the last update that I saw from the Army was that they're not going to be releasing any additional information until their investigation is complete, but we do know that that could change. I would say around 15 minutes ago, officials from Memorial Hospital told us that the next soldier was set to arrive here in about 25 minutes, so we are expecting somebody to be here in 10 minutes or so. We will keep you updated when that person arrives, but for now I am going to send it back to the studio.
Shay, with continued information and updates now, of course, in that 10-minute time period that she mentioned, the next person is expected to come to. We'll get back to Shay so you all can watch that unfold as well as we did with the first soldier.
And also, as we were talking about, President Trump being aware of what's going on, more than likely as well, his people are also offering any assistance that they can to Fort Stewart. And we could probably have FBI investigators or whoever they need in order to make sure they have a complete idea of what happened there today and how to make sure that it never happens again.
We're hearing from Georgia Governor Brian Kemp today as well on this. You see his statement right there on your screen. He says, "We are keeping the victims, their families, and all those who answer the call to serve in our hearts and prayers. And we ask that Georgians everywhere do the same." Of course, this isn't what the governor, Senator Warnock, President Trump, any of them want to be talking about or monitoring today. But now we know that all of them are keeping a very close eye on this situation in our area as 5 soldiers have been shot on Fort Stewart within the 2nd Armored Brigade combat area there on base, and that there had to be a lockdown put into place. If you're just joining us, this is why we're breaking into CBS programming right now, to continue to provide updates as we learn new information.
That's true, and we just have to continue to commend everyone who was involved today. Within about
All right, we are looking now at ambulances arriving at that level 1 trauma center in Savannah, Georgia. Quite a long drive between where 5 soldiers were injured and a shooter apprehended following an attack at Fort Stewart in Georgia. Let's go ahead and listen in to WTOC's coverage.
5 people were shot on base. 2 people are here at Memorial now. That last person is being unloaded from the ambulance as we speak. We don't know the extent of anybody's injuries, nor do we know the status of those 3 other soldiers. We do know that they were being treated at Wynn Army Community Hospital, which is on base, and that anybody that needed further treatment was going to be taken here to Memorial in Savannah. So we are hoping that those other soldiers are not in need of critical care, and that is the reason that they haven't been taken here to Memorial. But that 2nd soldier, I can see them on a gurney right now being wheeled into the building, and we can see police officers as well as we're
all right, seeing the first arrivals of the soldiers to that level 1 trauma unit right now. We have the opportunity to talk by phone to someone named Eric Boyle. Eric was at Fort Stewart when the shooting happened, went into lockdown as officials went into action. Just to be clear, as we listen to you talk to us, Eric, you do not live on the base, but you work on the base as an electrician. So take us to those moments right after you first got word. What did you see and what did you hear, Eric?
They contacted us and just told us that there was an active shooter on base, and we were coming off lunch, and they just put us in lockdown. We couldn't go nowhere. But hopefully all the people that were involved is okay, and their families. That stuff like this should not happen.
And you were there when it happened and when those alerts went out. Other than the alert, did you hear any gunfire, and what did you see?
Well, we hear gunfire all day long because we're on the range, but we didn't actually hear. I was in my car, so I had the radio on. I didn't hear the actual shots, but it's right down the road. They closed the main gates and shut everything down.
So did the alert, Eric, go over the radio that you had on?
They called us, our general contractor, and then called our supervisor.
And then when alerts like that go out, you quickly look up over your steering wheel and your dash, and you see the situation changing in real time. Paint a picture for our viewers of what you saw happen in response to that alert there.
We just make sure everybody was around and gather, to our meeting site and make sure everybody's safe that's in our area.
A lot of people see these things play out on the news and they think, well, this could never happen where I am, especially behind the tight security of an Army base. It had to have been a moment of shock to think that there was an active shooter situation inside that perimeter, Eric.
Yeah, definitely.
So where are you right now, and what's next for you today?
I guess we're just going to finish the day, and we're off of lockdown now. They told us, everything was clear. The shooter was apprehended, and I hope everything's okay with the people, the victims.
Right, absolutely. Well, we appreciate you talking to us, Eric, an electrician at Fort Stewart, there inside that perimeter during the shooting. We're glad you're okay. All right, let's go to correspondent Chanel Call, who continues to watch all of the latest developments on this story closely. Chanel, what do you have?
Well, two of the soldiers we now know arrived at Memorial Hospital in Savannah. This happened at about 1:20 this afternoon, Reed. This, we should mention, is the area's only level 1 trauma center, which may tell us something about the severity of their injuries. There was a bit of a delay, as we know, in getting them there because bad weather essentially prevented a helicopter transfer. So they were taken to this hospital by ambulance, which obviously took longer. Now, those two soldiers we know were among 5 people who were shot during this incident at Fort Stewart this morning. The 2nd Armored Brigade Combat Team, they went into lockdown just around 11 o'clock this morning. This team, we've been talking about this, Reed, is known as the Spartans. They've been trained to be the Army's most modernized, most lethal unit. Let's talk about what happened during that lockdown. The Army had advised people that were there on the base to stay inside, to close and to lock their doors and windows. And the last time we spoke, Rita, I showed you that video of what it looked like inside the base at that time, and you saw some of those military members mobilizing and walking quickly through the base, trying to respond to this active shooter situation. We know by 11:35, the active shooter was apprehended by the Criminal Investigative Division of the Army, and then about 40 minutes later, the lockdown was lifted for the main containment area, but the 2nd ABCT complex, that is still, as I understand, in lockdown for now. But we are being told that there is no public safety threat at this point. In fact, there were lockdowns at 3 elementary schools that are actually on that base. Those lockdowns, Reed, were lifted. You just had been speaking to someone who was on that base, a military member that had witnessed this moment, and he talked about this really powerful moment of hearing gunfire on the base sort of all the time because they've got shooting ranges there.
Right.
And so we're just starting to understand what it was like to be there during those probably terrifying and a bit chaotic moment. I also want to point out that we're hearing that there may be a press conference later on this afternoon, so we're hoping to learn more and piece the story together, and we'll take you there live as soon as that begins, Reed.
That's right. Chanel Call, thank you for that. We'll talk to you in just a few minutes, but to Chanel's point and scaffolding off of that, WTOC, the CBS affiliate there in Savannah, Georgia, they have a reporter positioned outside that hospital. Let's go back and listen in.
We do hear lights and sirens right now. Here at Memorial to receive treatment. Now, I'll remind you again that Memorial Hospital here in Savannah is the only level 1 trauma center in our area. It's the only hospital that is fit to treat serious or critical injuries like we can presume this soldier has. Fort Stewart and the Army has confirmed that 5 people were shot on base. 2 people are here at Memorial now. That last person is being unloaded from the ambulance as we speak. We don't know the extent of anybody's injuries, nor do we know the status of those 3 other soldiers. We do know that they were being treated at Wynn Army Community Hospital, which is on base, and that anybody that needed further treatment was going to be taken here to Memorial in Savannah. So we are hoping that those other soldiers are not in need of critical care, and that is the reason that they haven't been taken here to Memorial. But that 2nd soldier, I can see them on a gurney right now being wheeled into the building, and we can see police officers as well. As we're going to take a zoom out here, we see another ambulance coming in. We don't know, don't believe it's related to the situation. We were told that there were going to be 2 patients from Fort Stewart coming here, and we have seen both of them now. There is a very heavy police presence in this ambulance bay. We saw several vehicles escorting the ambulance. Now, you might be asking again, if these patients are in critical condition, why weren't weren't they taken by air? Why weren't they taken via helicopter? And that was, seemed to originally be the situation, but unfortunately the weather in our area prevented a helicopter from safely getting up in the air. So these soldiers had to be taken by ground via ambulance from Fort Stewart here in Savannah. And as we all know, that can be a fairly long trek, especially at this point in the day, which is why the second soldier likely came in with a police escort to get them to this hospital as quickly as they possibly could so they can receive the critical care that they're very much in need of. I can tell you that that first soldier did not have a police escort. They were brought in from the Army ambulance. This second soldier did have a police escort, and we can see those multiple agencies, including the Georgia Department of Public Safety, the Savannah Police Department, the Chatham County Sheriff's Office, and the Georgia State Patrol are still in the ambulance bay right now. We are working to get information on what the condition of these victims are. I've said it before, I'll say it again. In a typical situation, when somebody has been injured, if we have that person's name, we can typically reach out to staff at the hospital and they will give us what the person's condition is, whether that is critical, serious, the extent of their injuries. That's all they'll give us. But they
and
will
as we
tell
see
us
those
in this
ambulances
specific situation
arrive
because
at
we
that
are
level 1 trauma center in Savannah, Georgia, we also see this post from Facebook from Fort Stewart, where this story began. Fort Stewart, Wright Army Airfield, and Evans Army Airfield is all clear. That is from Fort Stewart talking about the gate. The gate is now showing an all clear. Now the thoughts, the prayers, and all of the focus and attention goes on those 5 soldiers who were injured earlier when a shooter opened fire. We do know the shooter has been apprehended, but now the big question, why did this happen, especially on the inside of a highly protected, highly specialized training military base? A lot of questions to command your dinner time headlines. Nancy Chen takes over next, right here on CBS News 24/7.
There you have it, guys. Hopefully this is everything's under control now. We are moving now for a later on news. I will cut off this live stream. I will say thank you to all of you for being here with me and kind of share this information about what was going on today. I'm gonna go ahead and keep track of this situation and give you more updates tonight at 6:30 p.m. in our next live stream. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. God bless you. Take care. Be safe. And I'll see you at 6:30. Bye bye.